Your thoughts on that message, Newt?
Well, look, it's a nice sentiment. First, you go out and the Democrats steal 5 or 6 states, and that's what Republicans believe we're watching. And we think we have evidence of a lot of it. Then you turn around and you say, let's forget 4 years of Nancy Pelosi. Let's forget 4 years of impeachment, harassment, opposition, hostility, hatred. And now that I've won, why don't we get nice together? I think he would have to do a lot to convince Republicans that this is anything except a left-wing power grab financed by people like George Soros, deeply laid in at the local level. And frankly, I think that it is a corrupt, stolen election. It's very hard for me to understand how we're going to work together without some very, very big steps by Biden. And I have doubts if the left wing of his party would tolerate him genuinely trying to work with Republicans.
And that hope, I do think, requires us to ignore that every time the Democratic Party and most of its surrogates have been pushed on the issues, they've resorted to character attacks on anyone that dared to disagree, Newt. So I want to ask you this. Do you think they even try? That is happy talk. Yes, it's true. That is optimistic talk coming from Joe Biden.
So that was Newt Gingrich spewing some absolutely awful conspiracy theory and rumors and unsubstantiated claims about the 2020 election. That basically Joe Biden, the Democrats, the left, George Soros, who is a often mentioned person by Gingrich in particular, got together to steal the election from Donald Trump and the Republicans, that they got together to steal 5 or 6 states, and it's rigged and it's flawed and this is illegitimate, and the media is, sort of just moving along with it while, we're trying to find the truth. And there's basically no pushback from Fox News here. They should be ashamed. Apparently, earlier in the interview, there is a point where, Gingrich is asked, you say that this election is stolen. Do you have any evidence, sir? And Gingrich says, well, we don't have any evidence because they rigged the evidence too. It's so tautological. It's so circular. We can't find any evidence because the local officials are all on the take. And that's where we would have evidence if it existed. But because everyone's in this conspiracy theory against the president, we'll never know, except for the fact that we know because the president can never lose, because the Democrats can never win, because the president can never lose, because George Soros, and so on. It's so awful. It's so awful. Look, let's be clear what he's implying with George Soros. George Soros is a Jewish person. Gingrich in particular has often highlighted very powerful Jewish people behind the scenes pulling the strings. Republicans did it in this election too. They literally had Bernie Sanders, a prominent Jewish American, with puppet strings behind Joe Biden. They are feeding into some ugly ideology about Jewish people here. That Jewish elites are stealing the election from hardworking Americans. That's what he's implying. I don't care what your individual opinions about George Soros are. You know what that kind of rhetoric leads to. Go back to Germany in 1930-something, and you know what that leads to. This is ridiculous. Newt Gingrich isn't just some hack. I mean, he is just some hack now, but he was Speaker of the gosh darn House. He was one of the most important people in Washington for a good deal of time. He was a major factor in the Republican Party and American politics. And you have him at this moment peddling absolutely ugly conspiracy theories that will get people hurt. Look at the link between claims about George Soros and the Pittsburgh Synagogue. This is the sort of links that lead to tragedy. But beyond that, he's poisoning democracy. He's absolutely poisoning democracy. There is no goddamn evidence of voter fraud in this election. There's none. There's none. And if they found some kind of glitch or what have you, that's not, a conspiracy against them, but a good faith error, then they can address that. But in most states, it will not be sufficient. And indeed, they did find a glitch in Georgia last night. Right-wingers freaked out about it, saying, oh, here comes the truth. And it increased Biden's vote total by 3,000 votes. There was a glitch, there was an error, and it was in Biden's favor at the end of the day. The error was corrected, and the error was benefiting Trump, and Biden ended up 3,000 votes to the green. There's no evidence here. This is embarrassing for the Republican Party. And this is embarrassing for Fox News because right now I'm telling you, Fox is going through a bit of a civil war. There are some people on Fox News that are going to be ready and willing to recognize that Joe Biden is the president, and yet there are going to be guests and hosts that will, for at least the next few weeks, but for God knows how long, peddle the conspiracy that Donald Trump had this election stolen from him. And that's going to mean that 20, 25, 30% of the country maybe will forever believe that Donald Trump didn't lose this election, which will forever poison American democracy, at least as long as those 25 to 30% of people are still living and anybody they influence is still living. It could be a generational blight on democracy. And you're never going to get rid of conspiracy theorists, but if people like this, smarten up, and if networks that put them on the air smarten up, we can actually do something to quell that. Responsible Republicans, and I'm not one of these people that defends Republican ghouls. Mitt Romney's a ghoul, George Bush is a ghoul. They're all ghouls. Every Republican and a good chunk of Democrats are ghouls. But let's be real. Mitt Romney coming out, other major Republicans coming out is crucial to Democratic legitimacy. Hillary Clinton and most Democrats came out and recognized Donald Trump, and that was good for democracy. Donald Trump was an awful president, but under the rules of the game, he won the election. Now it's time for Trump and his surrogates and right-wing media to do the same and give the same courtesy that was given to them. The American people deserve nothing less. Democracy deserves nothing less. Stop giving Gingrich a single second of airtime to peddle his dangerous, ugly conspiracies.